Starting with the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys were 7-10 last year after 17 straight 12-win seasons and no playoff wins. No. 7-10 last year. Dak got hurt, and always one of the most talked about teams in the NFL. Let's talk Dak's legacy.
Yeah, sure.
Just kidding. I'm kidding. I saw people joking about Dak's legacy coming up on like NBA podcasts and AFC West podcasts. Where everybody's got to talk about Dak and his legacy. 7-10 season last year for the Dallas Cowboys. Coming into the season last year, our biggest question was like, how do you figure out how to win in the playoffs? This is Mike McCarthy's last season. Is this it? Well, Mike McCarthy's out. Brian Schottenheimer in as head coach. A lot of turnover here. Matt Eberflus in as defensive coordinator. So turnover at the top. From a coaching perspective, you have George Pickens coming in at receiver to complement CeeDee Lamb. You have guys like DeMarcus Lawrence out on the defensive side of the ball. What are you looking for with the Cowboys this year, man?
Yeah, I guess just how good can they be? For a couple of off seasons now, they've had underwhelming or disappointing off seasons that have generally been characterized by a total lack of activity in free agency and then a desperate attempt to fix a glaring weakness in the draft. And a couple of those players are hugely important heading into this season. You've got Tyler Guyton at left tackle. Looks like he avoided, what could have been a terrible injury for him. It was initially reported as catastrophic and subsequently downgraded to actually it's not that bad. So Tyler Guyton remains hugely important for them at left tackle. You've got this year's first-round rookie Tyler Booker, drafted extremely high relative to expectations. He needs to come in and be pretty solid at right guard. How good can that offensive line be? The running back room, which is, Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, Jaden Blue, the rookie, who's more of a pass game, scat back type of specialist. What can this group be reliant on these players?
Man, there's so many fascinating storylines here. We mentioned on the training camp battle show, or at least I described it as the Cowboys building the running back room, kind of like how the average analytics driven person might, where you just almost completely neglect it, take whatever's off the scrap heap and just move forward, and that's what you have. 2 straight years of letting Tony Pollard walk, now letting Rico Dowdle walk, and Rico did a pretty good job. But theoretically, you could kind of say that they worked it the right way by not investing heavily at the position. But there was also this point where it was like, man, is the run game good enough? The same thing we said about the Dolphins earlier. Is the run game good enough to win when you need to, late in the season, playoffs, or just when teams are taking away the pass? And now you're taking rejuvenation projects of Javonte Williams. Miles Sanders is just okay. So they've neglected the position again. Then you add in the Brian Schottenheimer factor. And remember, Schotty was not a coveted head coach.
No
one interviewed him except the Cowboys.
Right.
And then, of course, that becomes a punchline. And, why are you bringing in Brian Schottenheimer? And because of the Schottenheimer name, because Marty was all about Marty Ball, run the ball, stop the run, slow the game, do all that. I think there's, in Brian at points when he was play caller at various points was very run heavy. But the thing I remind people, he came in as the, quote, offensive coordinator for Mike McCarthy, even though he wasn't calling plays, which coincided with some of Dak Prescott's best play. And Schotty was there the last time Russell Wilson, though at the time when Russell Wilson had the most elite stretch of Russell Wilson's career in 2018 into 19, Brian Schottenheimer was there. So I'm fascinated by how this ends up looking here, because even though I think he's become like a punchline at times for, he runs the ball too much, didn't let Russ cook, he's been adjacent to some really good quarterback play, including with Dak.
Yeah, and it's not unclear that would be a bad approach for Dak Prescott either. I mean, he's had games and stretches where he's had to pass the ball a lot, and he's looked fantastic. I think he can be a very good quarterback in a pass-heavy offense as well, when the offensive line is good, when the receiving core is good. But it also might be true that the Russell Wilson type of approach of leaning on the run game and the offensive line is beneficial to Dak Prescott overall, given how sort of sensitive he seems to be to changes in his environment, whether it's the offensive line, the receiving core, et cetera.
But Schotty was also, like, when Russ was the stretch where he was, quote, cooking and they were letting him pass the ball a little bit more. Schotty was the guy calling plays. A little more screen game, a little bit more easy button for Russ, and not just run, play action. And it was a little bit – I think he did a good job dialing it up for Russ a few years back.
He doesn't help himself with the narrative of, the run-heavy sort of old-school coach when he talks, though. Have you seen some of the quotes that have come out of Dallas Cowboys camp?
What do you got?
This is from John Machota, who's just quoting him. Cowboys coach Brian Schottenheimer. The best thing you can do for any offensive line, any team offense, when you're playing elite defensive linemen is pound the frickin' football. Just frickin' try to shove it up their ass. And that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to be physical.
That's why he got the job. That's how the Cowboys operate.
Yeah.
So we're the Dallas Cowboys. We're just going to move the ball at will with the 3 first-round Tylers up front. It's going to be a fascinating dynamic because all I'm saying is I think the quotes – because McCarthy would say that all the time, and then he would have the most pass-heavy game script. Like he would kind of run the ball early and then just, go pass-heavy. So we'll see. And then
he is quite – I mean, the point I'm making about all this is he does seem to be quite an old-school style of coach. The other thing he's had them doing is there were some fights breaking out in Cowboys camp, so he just had them all running wind sprints. I mean, this is straight out of the 1970s stuff that's happening in Dallas Cowboys camp.
I love it. I love the stories coming out of Dallas. Last year, CeeDee Lamb did not have a compliment. Again, the way the Cowboys roster has evolved the last couple of years, I think every time Dak had a multitude of weapons, this offense did well. Dak did well. There was a point where CD was the number 2 to Amari Cooper, and they still had Michael Gallup, and CD was really the 3 when he first came in. He's a clear, legit wide receiver 1. They did not have a complimentary piece last year. Now they have George Pickens. So whatever you want to say about George Pickens, as a high-end number 2 wide receiver, he could be outstanding. You keep his head on straight, all of a sudden defenses do actually have a couple of receivers to account for here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that combination of what can George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb be together with, some ancillary pieces that can make noise as well. Kevontae Turpin, that kind of dynamic gimmick speed receiver. Jalen Tolbert is not a bad player either. That could be a really good receiving core. George Pickens, maybe the best contested catch receiver in the NFL. That itself is wildly noisy, and that's the problem. But when you're pairing that with CeeDee Lamb, I mean, that could be spectacular.
The other, again, thing that's changed in Dallas, they were ranked as a top 5 offensive line for 6, 7, 8 years between having Hall of Famer Zach Martin, Hall of Famer Tyron Smith. They were loaded on the offensive line for forever, and now they've been chipped away at. Zach Martin retiring. He'll be replaced by first-rounder Tyler Booker. Tyron Smith got replaced last year by Tyler Guyton. Tyron Smith replaced by Tyler Guyton at left tackle. Guyton was one of the biggest projects coming out of the draft, had a 49 PFF grade as a rookie. So I would say this is...
And this injury is not helping his...
And now he's injured and
missing
better. Most, if not all, of camp here.
Right.
So Tyler Smith, love him at left guard. Cooper Beebe looked really good as a rookie center. I like both of those 2 spots. I think Terrence Steele is serviceable at right tackle. It's Guyton at left tackle, rookie Tyler Booker at right guard. They're the biggest question marks, whereas Dallas used to come into the season with 4 out of 5 spots solidified and maybe 1 question mark. I think everything's a tick below where it was, and I think that's going to be a problem in the run game and in pass pro and 3rd and long. Hey guys, real quick, only 40% of our viewers are actually subscribed, so let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and now let's get back to the action.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this roster top to bottom, and it's there's a lot of good players here and a lot of elite players here. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is one of the best receivers in the NFL. Micah Parsons in any given year could be Defensive Player of the Year. There's a lot of talent top to bottom, but there's also almost everywhere you look, there's a hole or there's a potential problem spot on both sides of the ball in almost every area. I mean, maybe your receiving core, you'd say, I don't have a problem with that group. But you could easily find a critical flaw in the offensive line. You could say the backfield might be nothing special. You can look in the defensive line and say there still might not be anybody that can stop the run up the middle. Where's every single level you're looking at it and saying, that's a red flag, that's a red flag, that's a red flag. So Again, it feels like a product of the last couple of off seasons where they were a very good team for 2-3 straight years, and then they just let that get chipped away at.
And then just going back to the running back room again, I think Javonte Williams, not the same player he was a couple years ago post injury. Miles Sanders, I think he might get the award for the most Thomas Jones, 3.8 yards per carry, take what's there type of player. I don't have a ton of faith in the run game unless the offensive line, unless everybody in the O-line, comes good.
Yeah, or Javonte Williams somehow, multiple years removed from the injury, rediscovers his explosiveness, his, burst, thing that made him so dynamic coming out.
And I love the buy, like just $3 million at Javonte Williams, who used to be an incredible tackle breaker. We're just 3-4 years removed from his best play. Defensively, not only did they miss Dak last year, they missed Micah Parsons. He missed a lot of time when he's out there, as you said. Outstanding. Interesting group of edge rushers here. DeMarcus. My gosh, I'm like losing names here in my 40s. DeMarcus Lawrence, who was my favorite free agent pickup for the Seahawks.
Consequently, he must be one of the most critical offseason departures for the Dallas Cowboys.
Critical departure. But the group replacing him, second rounder, who we thought was a first rounder, Donovan Ezaraku.
I love that guy.
Yeah. Marshawn Leland is a second rounder. And then Sam Williams, who's getting a ton of hype in camp. I think the aggregate on the edge, including Dante Fowler, who's a nice 3/4 type of edge, I think they can really stitch it together opposite Micah Parsons there with some depth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think Ezaraku's might have as much juice as a pass rusher as anybody in this draft. And I would put him up there with, guys like Abdul Carter in terms of the ways that he can beat and cause problems for an offensive line. You put him on a defensive line that already has Micah Parsons, and now you could potentially have some real juice.
I have the same concerns at defensive tackle that I had. I like Osa Odigizua, excellent pass rusher. Remember last year they were getting absolutely gashed in the run game. Historically bad in the run game the first 6 or 7 weeks of the season. It got better as the year went on, but Mazi Smith still struggling up front to be what they wanted him to be as a former first-round pick. He had a 34 PFF grade last year that I think showed up on film. He was getting wrecked at the point of attack. They have no mass at defensive tackle. Again, it's just like the Chargers every year. I mean, I have massive concerns about that group up front.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a problem for years. Mazi Smith was supposed to solve the problem and hasn't yet. I don't understand what they did with him to begin with once they drafted him, got him to lose a bunch of weight. Theoretically, the weight has been put back on now, but he hasn't made that impact. I don't know if they have a guy that can make that impact, but they still desperately need it.
So as I'm breaking this all down, it feels like the Cowboys of a couple years ago, where I think the run game wasn't good enough, the run defense wasn't good enough, but they had some pass rushers. If they got a lead, they could lean on you with the pass rush and force a ton of turnovers. They remember how many turnovers they forced with Dan Quinn. Trevon Diggs, in the secondary, ball hawk. Deron Bland at corner, ball hawk. So it feels like the Cowboys of 2-3 years ago, that if they get a lead with the pass game, they can get after you and let things snowball when they beat. And that's why they beat up on bad teams, right? They get a lead, and then before you know it, pick six, and they're just leaning on you with the. But in the biggest games, when they're going up against the best teams, didn't have the line of scrimmage. They lost. They just pretty much lost at the line of scrimmage. So interesting setup here, I think, for Dallas once again. I think they're built the way they have been, and we'll see if Schotty's old school approach actually can offset some of that, and maybe they're going to be more physical than I thought. Personnel wise, I think they're in a similar spot where they were a couple of years ago, though.
Yeah. I mean, they have a lot of question marks, and they need quite a few of them, I think, to break their way for them to be a good team. Even then, you've got guys coming back from injury who are question marks as well. I don't know. I don't love this team, but it is talented in some pretty critical key areas, which is important.
I mean, we haven't talked about Dak Prescott a ton. I mean, he's a good quarterback, right? When you're ranking quarterbacks, he's been in and around the top 8, for the last 4 or 5 years. And I think it's a weaker top 8 than it was 5-6 years ago when some of the elite quarterbacks were still there. But then 2 years ago,
Right. We're only a year removed from him having like a strong MVP case.
But it was 90 plus PFF grade against bad teams
Sure.
and a 70 something grade against good teams, right? So the stats, I'm not saying they were hollow, but they were top heavy against bad teams. So that was a fair question. But Dak's a good quarterback. You have a good quarterback. The 1-2 punch of CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, I mean, that's going to get you places. Micah Parsons in this pass rush, it's going to get you enough places to the point where I'm going to go over the 7.5 for the Cowboys. I just think ultimately they had a lot of the turnover that they've had on this roster, the inability to replenish it through the draft. They just they're stylistically a similar roster as a couple years ago, but not as strong. So I don't know that they're a 12-win team, but I think they're over 7.5.
I will go under. I don't love what this Cowboys team has put together.
Man, under 7.5. If Dak stays healthy, that's going to be tough to do. I think if Dak stays healthy.
If the Jets can
Unless Schotty's a disaster. I'll say that now I have to say it about like every first-year head coach. Maybe this first-year head coach just
maybe this guy's an idiot.
Just because it's like the Nathaniel Hackett clause.
I mean, look,
you
anybody
have to say
could
that
be
because he might forget what you're supposed to do.
Whatever about Nathaniel Hackett, who I don't think was ever necessarily seen as like, the most coveted head coach in the world. But like if Josh McDaniels can be the hottest coaching ticket out there and be probably the worst head coach in NFL history. Very minimum, I think Josh McDaniels is on the Mount Rushmore of worst head coaches in NFL history because he did it twice.
Right.
If he can do that, then it's possible for anybody who gets given the head coaching, it's possible for you to make that case that any of these guys is the next Josh McDaniels. Ben Johnson could be the next Josh McDaniels. Brian Schottenheimer could be the next. Any of these guys could be Josh McDaniels. And if they are, the team stinks.
What if Ben Johnson's just the worst people person and just a X's and O's nerd? That's all he can do. It's possible. Never know.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
Check the Mic is live every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so be sure to hit this subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.
The all-knowing algorithm is convinced that you'll like these videos as well, and frankly, who are we to argue?